Awesome. Welcome, everybody, to Building Accessible AI, Embedding Inclusion Across the Software Development Lifecycle. I'm really glad to be here. I love Drupal Camp Asheville and all the other camps as well, but this one especially. Today we're going to obviously talk about AI and accessibility and how these products, they don't happen by accident, or they shouldn't happen by accident. They come out of those intentional systems to get better tooling and planning that's grounded in disability from the start. So I'm going to kind of go through that on a high level and then talk about a couple, show a little demo, and depending on time, I'll reset my time here so I know how much we're here. Can go a little bit deeper on that, and if we run out of time for Q&A, just find me later, or if it comes up short, then you get an extra few minutes. So we'll see. I've only done this once as a lightning talk, so we'll see how the timing goes, but welcome. Yeah. So first, let's ground ourselves. The software here, we're seeing the typical software development lifecycle. It roughly goes around the same stages, whatever you call them. They might be slightly different or combined. But typically, you have a planning, design, development, code review, and CI/CD, like automated testing, deployment pipeline that runs before code ships, things like that, public releases, and customer feedback. At GitHub, we have a couple other additional kind of pre-GA that we have as well, including some inclusivity testing that we do, which is pretty cool. But usually at a lot of organizations, ours included at times, accessibility doesn't get that seat at those early steps, and it shows up right before launch, after a user complains often, and during an audit review. And that is a reactive approach, and it causes real friction both with our coders and our other stakeholders, internal, external, our users as well. So that last minute bug fixing, delayed releases, it's definitely a worse experience for everybody. As we know, we talk about accessibility being, if you've ever heard the metaphor, the blueberry muffin, you can't put the blueberries into the muffin after it's baked. You have to put them in the batter before it's baked. Otherwise, it would be kind of a weird looking muffin. It wouldn't taste the same. So waiting to the end, of course, is expensive for any kind of bug, and accessibility is also that case. And there's that well-known visual here. We have the design, we have the 10x, we have 100x at the code review CI/CD, and the customer feedback 1,000. Plus, we're also under the gun fire, such as like the customer not being happy, and sometimes that results in lawsuits and other kinds of things. And definitely our leadership does not like that. But of course, dollar figure, that's not the most important part. It's really those real people who get locked out of the product when it's broken. That legal risk, lost customers, damage, brand, all of that stuff. So now we're bringing AI. That's pretty typical. So now we're bringing AI into the picture. So the AI coding agents are helping some teams move faster than ever. So more code shipped in less time. But that speed is kind of a double-edged sword because it doesn't fix the broken process. It just runs that process faster. So essentially, we're creating more accessibility bugs at a higher rate than we normally would. So it definitely, AI is very helpful in that sense. There's a lot of research around LLMs and the output of both the code and its review process. And right now, the picture is not very positive. So you can't just copy paste a piece of code and assume it's accessible. Even if you ask it to make it accessible, it's not always the case. Even it's very adamant, I made this accessible, and you're like, oh, you forgot this. Oh yeah, you're right. AI is so helpful. It always tells you you're right. So of course, how do we keep pace? We need to make accessibility not just at the end, final check. We want to also do it at every stage of the software development lifecycle. This concept around, if you're not new to accessibility, you probably heard this a lot of times about shifting left. And we want to shift it left as far as we can, and then also at every stage, and making sure that it's accessible. A lot of this starts with that grounding and disability. We talk about that also in our accessibility field, meaning bringing disabled users, people with disabilities, into user research, into the planning, into the product discovery, rather than just designing it from a distance. So we also say nothing about us without us, and that is one of the mantras in the accessibility community, and we just want to make sure we have as many voices as possible in the room before you even get to the last stage. Practically, of course, that means accessibility requirements are written into the acceptance criteria from day one. It's not treated as a nice to have, but a critical pillar. And at GitHub, we do have accessibility as a pillar foundation, where a product can't launch without these specific checks around accessibility. And that always happens. And the theory is we've already done this down here, but it doesn't always, the reality is sometimes a little bit different. It's a little bit of fire at the end there, a little bit too. So here's a couple examples of building voice-driven feature with disability at the center of design. I was talking with some colleagues and folks in the disability community, and we've got these percentages from this survey that we had with them. So the way that accessible architecture changes the way assistive technology and now AI agents actually interact with an interface. So if you've never thought about this, assistive technology, like screen readers, switch devices, control, they read through that interface and underlying code structure. So they are essentially the most disabled entity on the web, right? They don't have eyes, they don't have ears, they don't have fingers, right? And so what they're experiencing is something similar to like what somebody with a disability might experience as well. We have some good news and some bad news. We have, of course, over 1 billion people disability. That's a giant number. We've had a great number, 76% of neurodiverse employees. They perform better work with Copilot. And that's Copilot. Microsoft has a Copilot in GitHub too. So this is across all the Copilot, flavors, which is great. That's great news. It's really helping people internally actually get things done. But then we have this other stat over here, 37% of voice-initiated Copilot tasks are abandoned mid-flow. So there's obviously like some things that are working well with AI, maybe some things that aren't working as well with AI. So moving into the design phase, our tools really need to make sure that inclusive design is the easy path and not extra. It's unrealistic to expect every designer to have the full accessibility guidelines memorized on top of everything else they're already doing. So that guidance needs to really live inside the design tool they're already using, surfaced automatically. So we have things, of course, now like built-in color contrast checkers and other tools that in the past you had to have. It was external and now it's moved to internal. But one of the things that I get to show, like at least on a high level here, is one of the projects I got to work on with the Microsoft team. It's called Accessibility Assistant for Figma. And there's a link right here. It's the aka.ms, and then it's the word Accessibility Assistant for Figma. And Figma is spelled F-I-G-M-A. And if you're not familiar with Figma, it's a design tool that pretty much everybody uses in the tech space. If not this, something similar. But this is a developer opens a design file and already has things like the tab order mapped out, semantic rules defined. The file specifies like not only what a button looks like, but that it is a button structurally, HTML-wise, and there's no guesswork. So I was a front-end developer for many, many years, and I would get design comps that were just PDFs or just like straight image, or even if it's in a Figma file, they don't have all these details. So these accessibility assistant for Figma can help with annotations, but also like it walks you through. So it's not like you just need to know about these annotations. It will actually like ask you. So almost like a little wizard here, where it'd say, hey, did you check the color? Hey, did you snap to pixels? Hey, did you do this? And so it'll really like ask you a lot of questions. They do the same thing with those tab stop as we just saw here. So again, as a developer, I wouldn't necessarily need to guess where I'm going first. It will tell me exactly where I'm going to go first. So that's really cool. That's one of the things that just kind of came out this last year. GitHub also has so this is a little bit different. GitHub also has a accessibility annotation toolkit that you can also get in Figma, which behaves a little bit differently. It doesn't go through like a wizard kind of situation. So you really need to understand what it is you need to add to the design file itself, but those are also available. You can use both. So in coding, disability or accessibility should show up through the accessible components, repo guidance, Copilot instructions, editing tools, unit tests, all the things. But coding models, as we kind of talked about earlier, left on their own are not really great at generating accessible code. They'll invent accessibility attributes that don't actually exist. I've seen this a lot, ARIA. ARIA is already hard. Some of the ARIA is hard to spell, like ARIA labeled by. I feel like everyone always misspells that one. But it'll generate ones that don't. It'll just misspell things as well. Or because if you think about the AI, it's trained on all the data that came before it, and a majority of our data is inaccessible. We did a workshop yesterday about accessibility, and we talked about the webbing million. And it's talking about how many things, how many websites, the top million websites, and how inaccessible they are. And we are still up to, 95.9% from just that automated checker alone is already inaccessible. So once we start thinking about manual checks, and we talk about design checks, and we talk about user checks, we're probably 99.9% of the web is very inaccessible. So AI is not any different in that rate. So out of the box, we have here on the screen, it says they write things that only pass 8 to 25% of automated accessibility checks. So the opposite of that is essentially 75 to 92% of the time it is not accurate whatsoever at all. When you add these other things to it, instruction files, skills, deterministic tools, the percentage goes up higher and higher. So this is like a cumulative effect. So not only instruction files would be like, you have AI instructions that says, hey, Copilot, I want you to use these requirements, internal, external resources, and you kind of teach it expectations of not only like what sources, but also what kind of output you want it to have. And then skills are a little bit different, where they give like reusable things that happen all the time. So if you always see color contrast issue on, let's say, a particular component, you can highlight that in the skills, and you can say, be aware of this. This is something we catch often in our own tests. And so we have that higher percentage rate of passing, which is 86. And then the last one is deterministic tools, where we're not trusting vibes. We're running those checks, automation, prove that output is accessible. That basically is that human in the loop, and we're making sure the pass rate in theory is 100% on that one, which is great. And then kind of going on here to the color's a little bit off here, but it does meet color contrast ratios on my screen. But scanners and AI remediation. So code review and CI/CD is your last automated line of defense before that code reaches that real user. And that's that final checkpoint when the human or automated system reviews changes before they merge into the code base. So if something slips past all those other stages up to here, this is kind of like a little bit of a safety net. And again, like at GitHub, we do it at multiple stages. So we've already linted, we've already done a design review, we've already worked with users at this point. This is kind of a final check. Did anything slip through? Did anything regress? Did anything, come out of nowhere? Or somebody said, ignore the linter code and just kind of did their own thing. So this is kind of where we go before we do like a beta release. And then we get into pre-production releases. And then we have like private preview, and then we have a general release. So we have a lot of different stages. What the theory is that we'll be able to catch it. And in these like pre-GA stages, we can also get users who are interested in testing this to come in and say, hey, this is what's wrong with it as well. So in theory, we should get most of the things, but again, that's not quite the reality. So that kind of brings us to a concrete tool that we use. So I kind of talked on a high level of what we do at GitHub when it comes to accessibility and AI. But this scanner, we take what we do internally, and we package, I'd say we stripped everything down to like an essence, to a core, which you can take and then build upon it how you want, with the instructions, with the skills, with everything that you want to add for the AI for your particular checks. And so we open sourced this last October, which is pretty exciting. And we've seen a lot of customers and other users do really cool things with it. And what it does is its concept of find, file, fix. So it uses GitHub Actions to scan the code base, and then it creates issues, and then it uses AI to create PRs to solve said issues. And again, humans in the loop throughout the process. We have some customers who are AI agnostic or can't use AI because they're higher ed or their state requirements, or they have to use a specific flavor. So they can do things like just finding and filing issues. They don't have to go all the way through and use the AI, but that is an option here. So next slide is a demo of that. My friend Lindsay, who's the engineer at GitHub, is going to go through like a high level find file fix and kind of just show you in case that's something that you're interested in using internally. And then I can show you a little bit deeper of a demo on that. And then you can have a URL if you want to test this at home, so you don't have to add it to your repo. But I'll let Lindsay talk about that. Let's see. So hopefully you can see this okay. And the audio is good. Let's see. It should just automatically play.
This is GitHub's accessibility scanner, and it turns accessibility testing into an AI-powered workflow right inside GitHub. In just a few minutes, we can go from scanning a site to opening detailed issues to having Copilot start fixing them for us. The workflow is simple. Find, file, fix. First, we'll head to the Actions tab and run our scanner workflow. We've named this one Accessibility Scanner Demo, so let's start a new run and watch it work. Step 1 is Find. By default, the scanner runs ACTS, one of the industry standards for automated accessibility testing. As the logs update, we can see it inspecting the site and surfacing potential accessibility gaps. And this is where the workflow starts to get powerful. Once issues are found, the scanner moves to Step 2, File. Instead of leaving us with a report that someone has to manually review, copy, triage, and turn into work, the scanner creates GitHub issues automatically, right here in the repo. Each issue includes the context needed to understand the problem, what was found, where it was found, and why it matters. Now comes Step 3, Fix. With GitHub Copilot enabled and configured to open pull requests, the scanner can assign these issues to Copilot, and Copilot can start turning accessibility findings into code changes. Let's jump over to the Issues tab. Here, we can see the scanner open 10 accessibility issues from this workflow run, and Copilot is already getting assigned to them. Opening one up, we can see the scanner has given Copilot a clear, structured task, detailed about the accessibility issue, guidance for the fix, and a checklist to work through. And there it is. Copilot has already opened a work-in-progress pull request. That means the scanner didn't just find a problem, it created the issue, gave Copilot the context, and started the path toward a fix. The accessibility scanner helps teams catch accessibility problems earlier, track them like any other engineering work, and use AI to accelerate the fix, all inside of your GitHub repo. That's the power of Find, File, Fix.
Thanks, Lindsay. Of course, she has to sound very excited about this, as this is part of some demos and presentations and things like that. But it's really kind of cool what we can do with it. And so I'm going to go, actually, let's see if I press and show here. All right, find my arrow. So as we learned or talked about yesterday, Axe Core is a API for accessibility rule set, essentially. And so this is utilizing that, but you can also add, because it's built on Playwright, you can add additional modules of your own extensions. And so that's what we've done, like with reflow and alternative text. So there's a couple different ones. You can build your own extension and also open source it, which we highly encourage. If you are interested, there's this quick access URL, QR code, and if not, it's you'll have this link later. But basically, this is a fully built kind of demo as far as like how this works. So what you normally would do is you would have the scanner, put it in your repo, and then you would have ways to configure it. And so this one's all pre-configured for you, so you could kind of walk through it if that's something you're interested in. And so you can, instead of just installing it yourself, you could just test this out if you'd like, if you're interested. What it does is we built a very inaccessible site. It says it's inaccessible on purpose. And so if we go to some of these sites, some people already can probably tell that, you know, the color contrast or some things like that, automatically they can tell it's not good. But these all have different kinds of errors on them that an accessibility automated checker could actually pick up. Because again, the automated checking is catching maybe 53% roughly of all of your issues. So you have so many more additional issues that you'd be finding. But this at least gives you a really good start, gives teams a really good start on issues. So to see it in action, we have a few personas that I created. We're going to use Alex because that one's pretty quick. Alex is a 28-year-old product designer. He's colorblind, they, them, then they are colorblind. And they say if color is the only signal, I have to guess what changed. So in this case, their goal, is quickly identify required actions, errors, and status changes while reviewing designs. Pain points are things like red-only error states, low contrast, and color-only feedback that creates uncertainty for them. Behaviors, so they use design tools and browser tools. They're designers, so they're using Figma, right? They're using those kinds of things. So they're looking for clear text, labels, patterns. And the needs are UI feedback should pair with color, that text, icons, labels, and patterns, so those stages are clear. So once we select a persona, we're just going to press that. What it opens is almost like this user feedback, comment, right? So we get a lot of user feedback from different sources, and then we create internal tracking issues to do this. And again, this is GitHub. I know a lot of people at Drupal, they use GitLab, so you could do something similar. Again, it's open source, so you just have to modify it to work with that system, but I wouldn't imagine it would be that difficult because they have very similar kind of patterns that we do. And so in this case, Alex, the persona, said that they tried to fill out the form and got stuck. The page seems to rely only on red text to show which fields need attention. And with their color vision, they couldn't confidently understand which changed and what they should focus on next. And so we take this thing that's not very specific, because user feedback typically isn't like on this page, this CSS broke on this element, right? It's more like high level, like this is my issue, help me. It's a blocker. So because the action that I created is triggered on the creation of that issue, we can see right now that's working. With the Wi-Fi, we might be a little bit slower. But in a second, we'll get a comment, and I'll have our session scan and things like that. So, and again, this is a demo that you have full access to now. You could use it right away if you want to test it. So the accessibility scan for Alex is in progress, and it says that the scanner is crawling the demo pages, and we can see that in action here. And so if you're not used to GitHub Actions or workflows, this is kind of how this one's set up, where it prepared the scan. Now it's actually running Axe, and it's applying Axe to all the pages. So these are all the test pages of the demo site that are broken. So we're going to find different things. And instead of finding using all the Axe file violations, we're looking at just one specific to Alex. So in this case, a lot of color contrast issues because of the red-green color blindness issue that that person has. We can see after a little bit of time, it has created all of these issues. And it's kind of going to finish that up and give us a little summary. And so all we've done so far is we found, and we're filing. So we found the issues, now we're filing the issues as issues, I should say. And then it'll do a little post summary thing here. So it tells us our scan was complete. It tells me what it did. It tells me Axe rules it used, color contrast, link and text block, and what to do next. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the accessibility issues the scanner opened. So we can pick any of the ones that they did. So let's just pick a random one. Oh, that's a minute ago. Let's do that one. So this one is elements must meet minimum color contrast ratio threshold. So on the images pages, this is an element that is not working. So it identified it. It created a screenshot, which is kind of cool too. And I think in an updated version, they're going to highlight a little bit better, because right now it just shows you the full page, not that specific element. But you can get an idea if you're not sure if you got thousands and thousands of pages, which one it is. It's a visual identifier at least. We added why it matters, how to fix it, and a little bit about the acceptance criteria. So in Lindsay's demo, she's just got some really plain information, and it's like a link or two like this. You can see how I added additional modifications and flows and triggers and actions. So again, you can make it anything that you would like it to make. And then what I do now is I can assign it to an agent. I can do the default, which is going to just pick the AI model that is most applicable to this particular thing. I have a full range of models to choose from as a staff employee, but you may have limited. There are a lot of free API models out there as well. But your mileage may vary based on what you pick. I think typically it picks the GPT-5 mini, but let's just do auto. So here you can add additional prompts. In our case, we have so much information. I don't know that we do need to add additional prompts, but you could add additional things like this was found on this day, or it was on this feature flag, or this private preview, or whatever it is that you want. You can decide what repo, you can decide branches, all that kind of good stuff. And then you sign the AI. So again, it'll take like a little bit longer probably than a normal session here, but eventually what we'll see, we'll see the session pop up. It'll change from, it'll change from this waiting to this other little dot thing. We'll see. Give it a second here. We can also look at the agents tab. We can see if it's kicked off. So here it is as well. And I don't know if you guys have worked with AI a lot, but or like this specific flavor or anything, that a lot of times you can watch its process, its thinking process. Right now it's just like checking up and setting up the environment to be able to do the kind of testing and create the PR for it. But it's kind of interesting, the logic that it's going through. And if it feels like it's going down the wrong path, you can easily steer it. It says steer active session when agent is working, so you can add additional comments. Like I've seen AI go like down some rabbit hole where I'm like, no, we've already been down that rabbit hole. We know that is not the right rabbit hole to be looking down. Let's redirect over to this like component, or look at this style guide, or that sort of thing. So it's firing up its Playwright MPC, and it's thinking. It's searching the code, but then it's also looking at the issue that we created and all the action reports as it does this. So after a little bit of time, it will be creating a pull request for us. And as a human in the loop check, you get to review the PR, make modifications, or ask it to make modifications. And then you can merge it, or you can restart the whole cycle over again. There's a lot of interesting things there. So this is definitely a way. So again, internally, we're doing this on a different kind of scale, very large scale, so it wasn't necessarily repo specific. But this kind of came about, this open source module, I should say not module, but whole project came about because we have a lot of customers who don't have expertise, like accessibility expertise, or they don't have enough of that, or they've got thousands of files and hundreds of repos, and they needed an easy way to kind of get some started. Because again, I've been an accessibility professional for a while, and I know there's quite a few in here that also do that. The last thing I want to work on is like a color contrast ratio thing that I know there's a tool for it. There's a billion tools for it. It's an easy hex fix. Let's just take the design aspect or leadership, like approving a color change out of that conversation. But this is just really easy, like code fix. I don't necessarily want to do that. AI can do that. I can easily verify, yeah, it did the right thing. In my case, like it might create a new variable, or it might create a new color that I don't want it to create. And I can redirect it and say, no, use this color variable over here. So I can really, again, eventually, and again, if you're doing this locally, not on the Wi-Fi conference, it's going a little bit faster than this. But it's very thorough. And depending on what model you use, it's going to some run faster than others, depending on all the checks that it does. Yeah, so this is, I think, very helpful for not only our customers who don't have that expertise at all, but also for us professionals who want to deal with more of the gnarly kind of things. So it's finished its PR. It's told us what the change was made. In this case, we changed the background color from, what do you have? Whoops, it just moved again. Background color and the text color stayed the same, it looks like, so it's just the background color change. And then it talked about a command to like check it out, and CI investigation, action required. So basically it says we need to create a pull request. So we press that, and so this is what it created. So not only did it find the issue, find the bug, it created the issue, and now it created a PR. It explains very lots of detail, a lot of verbosity here, what it did. But if we just look at the color change, it's very simple change here. So what I would do, again, before merging that PR is I bust out a color contrast tool. Or if I'm just like merging this locally, I could do a quick check before I merge it into the main base, and then it's done. And because this is a bad site on purpose, I'm not going to merge it because I want it to continue to be bad for other people. Which wasn't very, it's funny, it's like how hard it is to make a site inaccessible after so many years of trying to make them accessible. It's kind of it's more difficult than you think. And then at here, we also have a resources tab, which has a lot more about that scanner and actions and all that kind of thing. But really the cool thing I think about for people that are not necessarily even using anything like this are the concepts around prompt engineering for accessibility. So there's some really great articles there and kind of deep dives on how you do it. So your AI setup may be completely different and you can't utilize this open source thing, but you could still use the prompt engineering guidelines around that. Any questions on that? Or I don't know if I went into too much detail or not enough detail, but there's a lot of really cool stuff in there. So I'll pull this back up. So when all of that comes together, that planning, designing, deterministic tests, the AI-assisted reviews, the humans, all those things, something shifts really culturally. Teams stop treating accessibility as that dreaded blocker or like only conformance and really talk about it as part of the process, right? And I feel like AI has really accelerated that and people are excited to use it versus in the past where you have to have that expert there. And the expert didn't always like to be there either because they had to say the bad news, which is your component sucks, you need to restart this. It's awful, let's just break it. Thankfully, I went to Aubrey's session earlier about CSS, and there's a lot of really cool, better things that you can do nowadays too, so I think that helps as well. Because we like to do cool new things. But here's the last example I was going to just talk about real quick. This is a project that's not quite out yet. This is one that we're going to be releasing pretty soon, but this is a full circle kind of moment. It's called Speak to Done. So this is built on the Microsoft version of Copilot Cowork, and with that single voice request, someone can navigate an interface, find a specific email, in this case, find that track meet email from 3 weeks ago, add it to my calendar, and text the other parent. And they can do it all hands-free. And that only works because that underlying structure in application was built with accessibility first, and in mind with that proper semantic structure, clearly defined roles, accessible names, and all of that. So this is something that we've been doing a lot of beta testing with users. It's a little bit different than a search feature, a voice-activated search feature, because it does additional things like tasks or creates things that you ask it to create, files or starts like that. So it's a little bit more sophisticated. And this is an example of a person that I work with who happens to be blind, and she often forgets to mention things to her partner about events. So this is like a real life scenario as well. And she said it's been kind of a lifesaver for her to not have to focus on that. So that's kind of it. So what we're doing now, we're scaling inclusion, not exclusion, using AI as just one of those tools to help us do that. At the end of our day, our jobs are really to scale that inclusion, whether I'm a PM, a designer, engineer, or I own my own CI/CD pipeline. There's definitely all kinds of places where you can start using this kind of AI and accessibility tomorrow. So if you're interested in learning more, we have aka.ms/A11y-scanner-resources. There's also a QR code there if you'd like to scan it. But yeah, that's it. So I have a few minutes for questions if anyone wants. We'll stop. Yeah, go ahead.
So let's say that your brand guidelines are inherently inaccessible and you're running this tool. Mm-hmm. Is there any way to for it to flag, hey, maybe you should think about your brand guidelines a little bit better, but B, ensure that it doesn't actually make changes if those are things that have been dictated by your marketing department?
Yeah, as part of the, and I didn't get to show it here. Let's get into my repo real quick. Find my arrow. Let's go to the code. So this is just, again, example version, but under this .github file and part of your engineering prompts that you have different things like instructions and workflows and things like that. So in our Copilot instructions general, this might be something like in my case, W3C, Y, WebAIM, MDS, that sort of thing, coaching expectations, guidance, rules, that sort of thing. So I can tell you, AA, whatever. But I could also write in here a whole document about skip this file, skip this component, use this external, internal resource. And so I would build that into my engineering prompt.
Yeah.
And because you're a human in the loop and you're not just merging that PR automatically without a person like reviewing it, in theory, right? Like you have that, people already know like that's a brand guideline or restriction, or we're not counting that. Or maybe it's time for that conversation, right? To have the brand conversation.
It can be a hard conversation.
It is, yeah.
Because you have marketers who are so enamored with what they've created that they sometimes will fight tooth and nail.
The good thing, I mean, like for logos, they're exempt for from some of that, so that's good. And I've got this person, I don't know if you've ever, Nick Steenhout, he's been in accessibility forever. But he did this once where he was a consultant for a company that had that same exact issue. And he brought in 2 computers. One was slightly, darker configuration with the light, and one was, more standard or whatever. So he said, all right, here are 2 computers. Here's your brand colors. Tell me which one is yours. One was inaccessible and one was not. And the differences between the monitors and just like the color, tone, intonation, or whatever on the screen, they had a difficult time even picking out which one it was.
Yeah.
Like, so you could challenge them in different ways in that sense. Like what you're putting down and what you're rendering might be slightly darker, slightly lighter, just a variation. But what I've found when I worked with customers like that too is that as long as you kept that logo the same, like, those colors there, if you made that blue a little bit darker on the page, they tended to be a little bit more agreeable, because you can still use those colors for accents of like not decorative images, like a line or break or background gradients or something like that. So you could still incorporate that. But yeah, just depends on who the customer is and how married they are. But I love that trick that Nick did. I still use that.
That's really a good idea.
Yeah, it's fascinating because they could not figure it out. It's just slightly, but. So yeah, there's a lot you can write in here. There's a lot you can reference. And what we also do is like we train the AI models that we're using. So let's say we've done this a few more times. We know we can update our instructions to be like, hey, we know this is a pain point. You can modify it by doing this, or in your case, like let's skip over these because we already know that that's an issue, but that's not something we can solve with a hex.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have a customer like that, I take it? Or just,
not now, but I have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That happens. All right. Any other questions or thoughts? If not, thank you for everything and for listening. I'm going to press the red button.